It had been weeks since the last disappearance in the small town of Marlow, a quiet, secluded place nestled between towering woods and rolling hills. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone else, where secrets seemed impossible to keep. But despite its peaceful exterior, something dark had taken root. It started with Clara Bennett, a local historian. One crisp autumn evening, she had stepped out for her usual evening walk to the old cemetery at the edge of town. Clara never came back. The police searched for days, combing through the woods, questioning neighbors, even scouring the cemetery itself. Nothing. It was as if Clara had simply vanished into thin air. Detective James Alder, new to Marlow and still unfamiliar with its people, was assigned the case. He had seen his fair share of disappearances in his career, but there was something unsettling about Clara's case. No clues, no leads, just an absence that felt unnatural. The more he asked around, the more it seemed as if everyone in the town was holding something back. The residents were polite, but there was a lingering unease in their eyes. A silent barrier that made Alder feel like an outsider. One evening, after a long day of questioning, Alder stopped by a small diner in the heart of town. It was the only place still open late, and he hoped the owner, an old man named Hank, might have information he wasn't willing to share with the police. As he sat at the counter, nursing a cup of black coffee, he overheard a conversation at the next table. Two women, Emma and Lily, were talking in hushed tones, their voices barely audible above the clinking of cups and the low hum of conversation. "Do you think he's gone back to the woods?" Lily asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know, but I can't shake the feeling that Clara's disappearance was just the beginning," Emma replied. "I've been hearing things, strange noises at night, and have you noticed? There's always someone watching, from the edge of the trees." Lily shuddered. "It's just your imagination. The woods are big and full of strange sounds." But Clara was different. She knew something. Alder leaned in closer, pretending to sip his coffee, his heart beating faster. The woods? Someone watching? He had heard whispers of odd happenings in the area, but this was the first mention of it in connection to the disappearances. "Do you think anyone will find her?" Lily asked softly. Emma's face grew serious. "I don't know, but I do know that if someone doesn't, we might be next." The conversation shifted to a new topic, but Alder's mind was already racing. He had to get to the woods, and soon. There was something out there, something tied to Clara's disappearance, and he was going to find it. The next morning, Alder set out for the woods, armed with only his flashlight and a notebook. He ventured into the thick, shadowy trees that bordered the town. He hadn't gone far when he saw something strange. A patch of ground that seemed unnaturally smooth, almost as if someone had recently walked through it, but left no trace. As he knelt to examine the spot, he felt a cold breeze sweep through the trees, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was watching him. He glanced around, but saw no one, only the whisper of the wind through the branches. He continued deeper into the woods, his steps quickening, his pulse racing, and then he saw it. At the base of an old oak tree, half hidden by undergrowth, was a small wooden box. It looked out of place, its edges worn, as though it had been buried and recently unearthed. Alder opened it cautiously. Inside was a bundle of yellowed paper, tightly bound with twine. He unfurled it slowly and found that it was a journal. Clara's journal. He read through the pages quickly, his eyes scanning the hastily written words. Clara had been investigating the town's history, particularly the old cemetery, which had been established nearly 2 centuries ago. She had uncovered accounts of strange disappearances dating back to the 1800s, all connected to the woods. Her last entry was chilling. "I'm getting too close. They don't want anyone to know what happened here. I think I've found the key to everything, but I fear I may not live to see it revealed. The Watcher is out there, and he never leaves." Alder's stomach dropped. The Watcher? Was it the same figure the women had mentioned? He looked around, but the woods were silent once more. He tucked the journal into his bag and stood up, his mind racing. There was something in the woods, something ancient and tied to the town's dark history. But what did it have to do with Clara? Suddenly, Alder heard a rustling behind him. He spun around, but the forest was empty. A shadow flickered at the corner of his vision, and then it was gone. His heart pounded in his chest as he backed away, his eyes darting around in the growing twilight. He needed to get back to town. He needed to find out who the Watcher was. but as he turned to leave, a figure emerged from the trees, standing at the far edge of the clearing. It was a man, tall and thin, with a face obscured by shadows. Alder couldn't make out his features, but the presence was unmistakable, cold, unsettling, and full of intent. The figure took a slow step forward, and Alder instinctively took a step back. "Who are you?" Alder called out, trying to steady his voice. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand slowly, pointing to the journal in his bag. Alder's breath caught in his throat. "You're too late," the figure said, his voice low and rasping. "It's already been written." Before Alder could respond, the figure turned and melted into the shadows, disappearing into the depths of the forest. Alder stood frozen for a moment, then turned to flee. He had to get back. He had to tell someone. But when he reached the edge of the woods, the town felt too quiet, too still. As he walked back to his car, a realization gripped him. The Watcher had always been there, hidden in plain sight, waiting. And Clara, she had known the truth. But it had cost her everything. The case was far from over, but Alder felt a growing unease. In Marlowe, the past wasn't buried, it was watching. And it wasn't finished with them yet.